As of today, it will be the official policy of the United States government that there are only two genders, male and female.
The president's voice was clear and resolute as he delivered an unambiguous summary of the new executive order. Emma Caldwell had been restless, a deep and unrelenting unease churning within her. It began the moment the president signed the controversial executive order, defending women from gender ideology and restoring biological truth to the federal government. The air around her felt heavy, almost suffocating. The message struck with chilling clarity: only two sexes, male and female, would now be recognized by the government, defined strictly by biological attributes at birth, overriding the gender identities accepted by previous administrations. For Emma, a proud 35-year-old trans woman in the heart of New York City, and about 1.6 million transgender and non-binary Americans, the impact was devastating. What had once been a fragile recognition of their identities under federal protection was now at risk, leaving them to question not only their place in society but their very right to exist as recognized citizens of the United States. Each call she made, to friends, advocacy groups, and even her attorney, was driven by a growing sense of dread that her existence, once acknowledged and celebrated in certain circles, was now under attack from the highest office in the land. It felt like a thunderstorm rolling back the progress she had fought tirelessly to achieve. What would this mean for her job? Her legal identity? Her rights? Her phone buzzed, vibrating against the table and snapping her out of her thoughts. It was Tanya, a black trans woman her age and her best friend since college, returning her call. Emma immediately swiped to answer, her voice breaking as she spoke. "Tanya, did you see the news? Have you read what he's done?" Tanya's sigh was audible on the other end of the line. "I saw it. I've been trying to wrap my head around it. Honestly, I'm scared, Emma. I really am. It's unbelievable. I don't know what to say." Emma's chest tightened, a weight she couldn't shake. "What does this mean for us, Tanya? I'm scared too. I've spent so long just trying to live my truth." And now, her voice cracked. "Now I don't know what will happen to us." Tanya paused, the silence growing between them. Then softly she said, "It doesn't change who we are, Emma. They can't take that away from us." "But they're trying," Emma replied, her fingers trembling as she clutched the phone to her ear. "We have to do something. We can't just sit here and let them erase us," Emma added, pacing the room. As she moved, she stopped at the standing mirror. Her reflection in the mirror did little to comfort her. Her makeup perfectly done, hair styled the way she liked, but the sense of unease in her gut gnawed at her relentlessly. She had fought too hard to get here to embrace her identity and live with authenticity. But now, with the stroke of a pen, everything she had worked for could be ripped away. Would her documents be invalidated? Would her medical care be threatened? Her rights, once hard-earned, felt so fragile in the wake of this order. The soft hum of the fridge in the corner of her apartment was the only sound filling the room as she continued to stare at her reflection, searching for some semblance of calm. But all she saw was fear, uncertainty, dread. Her phone buzzed again, snapping her from her trance. It was a group text from the LGBTQ rights organization she had been a member of for years, urging everyone to join an emergency rally in response to the executive order. Emma hesitated. She wanted to be there. She needed to be there. But what if things went south? What if the protest only made it worse? Taking a deep breath, she typed a response, "I'm in. Let's do it." As she hit send, a surge of resolve filled her chest. She couldn't just hide. She had to fight, not just for herself, but for everyone affected by this. The next morning, the weight of the executive order hung heavy in the air. Emma could feel it as soon as she entered her office building. The usual hum of the workplace felt different, strained, tense. She walked past her co-workers, some of whom avoided eye contact, others offering sympathetic but unsure smiles. No one had said anything directly to her yet, but the glances said it all. They knew she was one of the people who would be affected. They just didn't know how to approach her yet. Emma sat at her desk, trying to focus on her work. But the minutes dragged on, each one feeling like a weight on her shoulders. Finally, an email popped into her inbox from HR with the subject line, "Important update regarding employee records." Her heart sank as she opened it. In compliance with the recent executive order, all employee records will be updated to reflect biological sex. Please be advised that this policy will apply to all future documentation and identification records. She read the email again and again, the words starting to blur together. Her stomach churned. Would she be listed as male on her records now? Would everything she'd fought for suddenly be stripped away, forced into a box she didn't belong in? A knock on the door jolted her from her thoughts. She looked up to see her manager, Jennifer, standing in the doorway. "Hey, Emma. Got a second?" "Of course," Emma said, forcing a smile as she stood to greet her. Jennifer entered the office, closing the door behind her. She was clearly uncomfortable. "Look, I just wanted to let you know that I'm here for you. This order, it's a mess, and I'm sorry you have to go through this." Emma's throat tightened. She appreciated Jennifer's kindness, but words felt hollow now. "It's not just about me, Jennifer. It's about everyone, about all of us who fought for the right to exist in our truth. What's next? How do we undo this?" Jennifer frowned, her gaze sympathetic. "I wish I had answers, Emma. I really do. But we'll be with you. There will be a way." Emma's life hadn't always been this complicated. She had once been a boy, Emmanuel, the name she was given at birth, the identity she had worn like an ill-fitting costume for years. Growing up in a small town, Emma had always felt out of place even before she could articulate why. She loved her family deeply but struggled with an unshakable sense of disconnection, as if she were a stranger in her own skin. It wasn't until college that she finally found the courage to embrace her truth and begin her transition. Choosing the name Emma felt like reclaiming a part of herself that had always been there waiting to emerge. Her transition had been a profound emotional, physical, and spiritual journey. There were moments of loneliness and doubt when she wondered if the world would ever truly see her for who she was. Yet step by step, she moved forward. Hormone therapy reshaped her body, giving her the feminine curves she had always yearned for, while surgeries aligned her outer self with the person she had always been inside. But the greatest challenges weren't the changes in her body. They came from the world around her. Coming out to her family had been one of the hardest hurdles. Her father didn't speak to her for months, and her mother wept as though mourning a son she believed she had lost. Still, Emma persevered, showing them her authentic self through love and patience. Over time they came to accept her, not fully understanding, but choosing love over judgment. Professionally, Emma had been fortunate to work at a progressive tech startup in downtown Dallas. For nearly 5 years the company had been a haven where diversity and inclusion weren't just corporate buzzwords, but genuine values. When Emma started transitioning about 10 years back, the company had gone out of its way to support her, updating records, providing resources, and fostering a workplace culture that celebrated individuality before transferring her to their New York office where many did not know her story. Her colleagues had rallied around her, offering kindness and encouragement, making her feel seen and valued. The company hosted monthly talks on gender identity and the challenges faced by marginalized groups, creating an environment where voices like hers mattered. When HR sent the email announcing that employee records would now reflect biological sex, as directed by the executive order, she felt like the ground beneath her was shifting. As she read and reread that HR email, the weight of what was happening began to settle over her. But the moment, Emma could sense the shift. She hadn't spoken much about it yet. Questions swirled in Emma's mind. Would her colleagues be forced to report her as male in the company system? Would her insurance, which had covered her transition-related care, suddenly be at risk? When she started talking to a few colleagues about it, most had been reluctant to say much. They were trying to process their own feelings about the policy change and didn't know how to reach out to Emma without making things worse. On her lunch break, Emma ran into David, one of her closest allies at work. David had been a vocal supporter of gender inclusivity in the workplace and had worked on several initiatives to help make their office more welcoming to transgender employees. "Hey," he said, his voice low as he approached her, "I just wanted to check in on you. How are you holding up with all this?" Emma forced a small smile. "I'm okay, I guess. Just trying to make sense of it all." Her voice wavered slightly. "I don't know what happens next, David. What if I'm forced back into the shadows? What if they make me erase who I am from every document, from every record?" David's expression softened. "Listen, you know I'm behind you. I'll do everything I can to help fight this. We all will." Emma nodded, grateful for his support, but she couldn't shake the unease that had settled in her chest. By the end of the day, Emma felt drained. Her phone had been buzzing non-stop with messages from friends, family, and advocacy groups, all sharing the same uncertainty and fear. Some were organizing protests, others were trying to plan legal challenges. But none of it felt real. None of it felt like it would truly change anything. That evening, she found herself pacing in her living room again. Her thoughts raced as she looked at the wall, her eyes tracing the framed photographs of her transition journey, before and after shots that told the story of her courage, her strength. She had fought to get here, and she wasn't about to let it slip away now. She dialed Tanya's number once more, waiting as the phone rang. When Tanya picked up, Emma didn't wait for pleasantries. "I'm going to the protest on Saturday," she said firmly. Tanya's voice was soft but insistent. "Emma, I get it, I really do. But you're putting yourself out there. Are you ready for that?" "I have to," Emma said, the words coming out more resolute than she expected. "I have to stand up, not just for me, but for everyone this will affect. They can't take this from us. I won't let them." The protest was chaotic, charged with energy and emotion. People gathered in front of government buildings, holding signs, chanting, and raising their voices in defiance. Emma stood at the front, feeling the surge of power and solidarity in the crowd. She wasn't alone. She couldn't afford to be, but as the protest grew louder, tensions rose. Police lined the streets, and the presence of counter-protesters began to swell. Emma could feel the unease in the air. Her heart pounded in her chest as she shouted the chants along with the others. This wasn't just a protest, it was a battle, a fight for survival in a world that seemed determined to erase her. Soon things were getting out of hand. Emma hadn't expected things to get to that, but as the crowd surged and the police moved in with riot gear, it was impossible to ignore the growing tension in the air. For a moment, she wondered if this fight was worth it, if it would not all be in vain. But as the tear gas filled the air and the sirens wailed, she knew one thing for sure: she couldn't back down now. Tanya grabbed Emma's arm, pulling her away from the front line. "We need to get out of here. It's getting dangerous." Emma's heart was pounding, but she couldn't make herself leave. She wanted to stand her ground, to make her voice heard, to say that she would not be erased. But reality quickly set in. This wasn't just a protest anymore, it was a movement, and the stakes had just gotten much higher. As Emma was escorted out of the protest by a handful of her allies, she felt the weight of the moment pressing down on her. She had fought to be seen as a woman for so long, and now this executive order threatened to strip that identity from her. Could she even fight this? Would it be better to go back to being Emmanuel in the eyes of the law? The days following the protest felt like a blur. Emma had expected a few articles, maybe some mentions in local news, but nothing could have prepared her for the tidal wave of media attention that followed. She found herself giving interviews, appearing on news panels, and even taking calls from major advocacy organizations that wanted her to be their spokesperson. At first, it felt like a dream, a validation that her struggle was being heard. But it quickly became overwhelming. Every interview was followed by a flood of messages, some supportive, some hateful. Emma had never been the kind of person who sought attention, but now it seemed as though the spotlight was unavoidable. In one particular interview, a prominent political figure, Senator Martin Graves, had publicly called her protest an affront to family values. Transgender individuals, he had said, don't deserve special treatment under the law. We need to focus on protecting children, not catering to a fringe group. Emma's heart sank as she watched the clip replayed on every news station. His words stung. They cut deeper than she had anticipated. It wasn't just about her anymore, it was about the entire community she belonged to. Was she strong enough to withstand this kind of scrutiny? Emma's groups are a legal battle as inevitable. With each passing day, Emma found herself discussing strategy with their lawyers, gathering information, and preparing for what would likely be a lengthy and emotional fight. She was determined to challenge the executive order, but the legal system was a maze, and she had no illusions about how long this could take. The lead counsel, Lisa Carter, was brilliant, sharp, determined, and deeply knowledgeable about transgender rights law. They met regularly, poring over documents and preparing for court. Yet every time Emma left those meetings, the weight of the case seemed to grow heavier. This wasn't just her fight, it was a fight for the entire transgender community. She had become a symbol, and while that filled her with pride, it also burdened her with the collective struggles of every trans person who had ever faced discrimination. One day, as Emma sat in the waiting room of Lisa's office, a crushing sense of isolation settled over her. The stress of the case was beginning to seep into her personal life, and the cracks were becoming harder to ignore. Tanya, who had always been her steadfast partner, was growing distant. Emma couldn't shake the feeling that Tanya was scared of the attention, scared of the danger, maybe even scared of the uncertain future. She couldn't blame her, but it hurt. More than ever, Emma needed Tanya's support. Yet the weight of the world seemed to be pushing them apart. Her family, while loving, couldn't fully grasp what she was going through. Their messages of encouragement, though well-meaning, often fell short of comfort. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother, "We're proud of you, Emma. We just want you to be safe." It was the word safe that stung the most. Could she ever feel truly safe in a world where laws could shift on a whim, where figures like Senator Graves worked tirelessly to make her feel like she didn't belong? One night, as they sat in uneasy silence, Tanya finally broke down. "Emma, I don't know if I can do this," she confessed, her voice trembling. It's a lot. The protests, the media, the backlash. It's overwhelming. I'm scared." The words hit Emma like a blow. She'd faced fear and pity from others before, family, friends, co-workers, even strangers, but hearing it from Tanya, the person who had once been her rock, left her reeling. "I get it," Emma said softly, wiping a tear from her eye. "But I need you with me now, Tanya. I can't do this alone. Please, prove our friendship and bond now. Tanya, please." Tanya looked down, avoiding her gaze. "I don't know if I can keep up with this kind of pressure," she said quietly. Maybe you need to focus on yourself right now. Maybe we need some time apart." Emma froze. Time apart? The words echoed in her mind, hollow and devastating. It felt like the world was crumbling around her, and the one person she thought would always stand by her side was retreating. She had fought too hard, had come too far to lose everything now. But as Tanya's words lingered in the air, the fear and uncertainty began to close in, suffocating and relentless. As the court case loomed, Emma found herself retreating into herself, away from the noise and the people around her. She spent long hours at home, pacing the apartment, trying to figure out who she was without the labels and pressures that had been thrust upon her. She wasn't just Emma Caldwell, the spokesperson for the transgender rights movement. She wasn't just a symbol of resistance. She was Emma, a woman who had fought tooth and nail to get to where she was. One evening, after a long day of legal prep, Emma sat at her desk, scrolling through her social media feed. Most of the messages were supportive, but there were plenty of hateful comments as well. One particular post caught her attention, a direct message from an anonymous account. "You're nothing but a freak. Go back to being a man." "You'll never be a real woman." The words hit her like a punch to the gut. She had heard things like this before, but it never got easier. Every hateful comment, every judgment, felt like a slap in the face, like she was being forced to prove herself all over again. She slammed her laptop shut and sat back in her chair. Was it all worth it? She wondered. Was the fight worth losing everything? Then her phone buzzed. It was a message from David, her colleague at work. "You're not alone in this. We've got your back." Emma read the words, and for the first time in days, she felt a flicker of hope. It wasn't over. She couldn't let it be over. She had fought too hard to let these moments of doubt define her. Emma thought she had faced it all: harsh words, relentless challenges, and heartbreaking moments. But will she find the strength to keep fighting? Can she rebuild the support she desperately needs? Or will the pressure push her to the edge? The court case still looms, leaving her hopes hanging in the balance. What do you think Emma should do next? Share your thoughts. Don't miss the next part of this gripping story. Like, comment, and subscribe to join the conversation. Thank you for watching.